Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if anyone is in our discussion group.
Stephanie, are you there?
Oh, yeah, you're super quiet. Let me turn up my volume. Okay, try now.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're super, super soft.
Okay. Let me try it again. Hold on a second.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? I guess not.
Can you hear me now? Better?
It's about the same. I can hear you well enough. It's fine.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Is that any better?
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good. So, I don't know, did the other people just drop the class, I wonder?
Well, I looked actually last week at who's in our group, and Sandra's not in it anymore. So I don't know if she. I don't know. I feel like we're so far into it to drop it.
Well, it's funny because my wife's taking classes too. In fact, she can hear you in the background because she's doing homework herself. But it's funny because we were just talking about that she got an email the other day or a little notification yesterday saying you can still drop the class and get a W, which just means
I got that notification.
I can't even fathom having this much effort into a class and then bailing on it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh no, with 3 weeks left, no, I got to finish this. Well, I'm not going to redo it.
Yeah, I guess maybe if you were failing a class.
Yeah, but I feel like if I had been failing and I was failing through halfway, I don't know. I think I would have addressed it already before investing 12 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't think I would have made it this far if I was in a hurt, like if I was in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's just the case with Sandra and that she didn't have any, unforeseen circumstances, because I've had some people that had to do that in other classes and, so I hope that she just decided she needed to do it at a different time.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, but I don't know about the other guys. I just haven't seen them. They're still listed as in our group. I haven't seen them on any of the, links or anything. Oh, by the way, I saw that you posted on the questions or whatever that Brother Hinsey posted, but you only posted to one of his responses, and this week you have to respond to both. It doesn't matter if it's to him or to a student, but you do have to reply to both threads.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was you just had to reply to one of the threads and then one of the other people when they.
Oh, yeah. He said it didn't matter if it was to a student or to him on either. You just had to do to both.
Okay, yeah, so. I knew I still had to do one, so I appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, as long as you know. Yeah, I was like, oh, Matt, wow, now that he knows we can do this, he's on it.
Yeah, I saw that. So I'm getting my points where I can,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. But there's a couple responses on there now, so you can, do it as you want. But
yeah, I confess, I am one of those point grubbers because, I want an A in every class, and I work really hard to do that. In this class, I tanked that first test, and so I've been fighting back up, and I'm like right there getting it back to an A-. So it's like doing all
exactly. I'm like, without the extra points, I'm a high B+, and I'm like, oh, come on, don't hurt my average. It just get me into the A category, so
that's exactly
I feel exactly. But I feel like if they offer that opportunity, why wouldn't you take it?
I totally agree. That's what I mean. It's funny because the extra credit for the every week that you get is so insignificant in how many points you actually get for what you're doing. But I feel like the extra practice helps. So it's not like it's a downside, but it's not.
Yeah.
you're not getting much for that. That's for sure. There's not a whole lot of.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to fail the class, this isn't going to save you. But I feel like it makes all the difference if you're trying to just get to that next grade point.
Yeah, if you're at a B+ and you want an A-, or you're at a C+ and you're trying to get to a B-, that can make a difference. But that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's 10 after. Do you want to just start?
Yes, I do.
It's been asked just for the last couple weeks, so okay, let's do it.
That sounds great. I was just going to open up the book too, because I, for some reason, thought I had it open and I don't. So I was trying to open it really quick so that when we're talking.
Yeah, while you're getting that open, I got all of the questions answered, but I have 1, 2, 3 that I wasn't really sure on. In fact, one of them I really had no clue. But anyways, I was like, oh, I hope Matt or at least anybody's on to discuss these with today. So I'm really glad you're here. It's really beneficial.
I think I have them all answered except for maybe 1 or 2, and I have an idea on it, but we'll figure them out.
Okay, great.
Okay, for number 1, I had D.
D, yes.
Number 2, I had C.
Okay, me as well.
Okay, for 3, I had C also.
Okay, I actually had C and I erased it, and I think it's a trick question. And so I put B.
Okay.
I found it in the book, and it wasn't what I thought. So let me see. Get back into my book. Do you have yours up now?
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's talking about money is a veil, because that's an exact phrase out of the book, but it is talking just about economies in the long run. This question is specifically for the short run. And so if you go to 22B, it actually is the very last sentence, if I'm reading it right.
You said it's in 20?
2B. B as in boy. It says the reality of short-run fluctuations.
Hold on, my book is still loading, it says, when I come back to the page.
Oh. Yeah, no, that's just fine.
I'm going to close it and reopen it.
Hey, while you're doing that, did you ever get that test for last week figured out?
You know, I did, but I didn't do it until the very last second, so I apologize for that. And I was going to email you, and then I forgot at the time. It was actually, what do you call it? If we had fixed those 2 answers before, I got a 20, I guess the bottom line is. So
great.
You were correct on our assessment.
Okay. That's great. I felt really good about that. I was like, I'm pretty sure we figured out where we went wrong. So I think we just rushed through. So I really tried to not do that this week as I was going through them.
Well,
but what's crazy is that I had that exact same thing happen to me when I was doing my own individual quiz last week.
I missed a couple on that too, and I know it's because I like you said, if you're not, what's the right word I'm looking for? They are kind of trick questions, the way they write some of them. And so if you don't really just, okay, what is the actually asking me here rather than what do I think he's asking, you can easily miss a couple.
Yeah, because it seems so straightforward like this one, but I think it's really kind of a trick question.
Okay.
So.
Hold on. And you're on 2B, you said, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's down towards the bottom?
Yeah, it's actually the last sentence. So the title of this is The Reality of Short-Run Fluctuations, because before that, where I was first referencing is the page before, and it talks about money veils, but it's talking about just the economy as a whole and just like an overview. And then it talks about the money veil. But this very last paragraph on here, it says, we can no longer separate our analysis of real variables such as output and employment from our analysis of nominal variables such as money and price level. Our new model focuses on how real and nominal variables interact. So that's why I think this is saying, in order to understand how the economy works in the short run, we need to study a model in which real and nominal variables interact. That's why I went with B.
Okay, because I like you found the sentence that actually uses that in the short run money is just a veil.
Yeah, and then I was reading this for something else and was like, wait a minute, I think I did what I do every week and I just saw an answer that fit and looked right and didn't read it thoroughly. So, but it actually says in the sentence before that, it says, to understand how the economy works in the short run, we need a new model. This new model can be built using many of the tools we developed in the previous chapters, but it must abandon the classical dichotomy and the neutrality of money.
Okay.
And the neutrality of money is what was saying money is a veil. So that's like that whole concept.
Interesting. Let me check one other thing here. I'm going to do a little search while we're doing this. Not that it makes a, what do you call it? I mean, 1 point isn't going to kill us, but I'm like,
well, it does though. It does.
That's what I'm saying. I absolutely want to get 100 on every turn in, so I totally am with you on this.
So this is where I'm at too while you're looking that up.
Okay.
So in 2A, it says assumptions of classical economics. And towards the bottom, it says the classical view is sometimes described by saying money is a veil. But then when you go to that next page, and it goes down to the bottom, it says, this new model can be built using the tools we've developed, but it must abandon the classical dichotomy and the neutrality of money. So one is like an overview of.
Sure. And in order to back up what you just said even deeper, as I do a Google search on that exact question that's off of question 3, the first thing that pops up, it says something about studying a model in which real and nominal variables work together. So,
well, and that's what the whole aggregate thing is combining two things.
You're right.
So just the definition of our chapter is combining them.
You're right. I think that is a little bit of a trick question, because them putting that in there on the exact wording that's in the same chapter is kind of like kind of cheesy.
Exactly. You have to really read it. That I totally. Like I said, I had it circled. I was like, oh, perfect, I found it, and then happened on this later. I was like, wait a minute.
Right.
So
I think you're right. I think upon further review, 3 is B. I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Okay, so continuing on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so 4, I had A.
I also had A.
Okay. For 5, I had D as in dog.
1 second here. I'm going back. 5, I had C.
Okay. So we know that one of the axes is nominal, which is the price, and one is real, which is the output. And so the vertical is up and down. Let's see. Vertical, no, C, you're right. Vertical is nominal, which is the price.
Right.
And yes, okay, I agree with you, C. Horizontal is the real, which is the output, which is the GDP. Okay, yes. All right, thank you.
Okay, as long as you're sure. I don't, like I said.
Yep, I totally agree.
Okay. All right, on 6, I had A.
I also had A.
And on 7, I had C.
I also had C.
Okay, for 8, I had A.
I also had A.
Okay. On 9, I had B.
In 9, I had D.
Okay, I actually have notes on this one. So let's turn to 3B, the very last paragraph.
Yeah, that's where my notes are too. So, okay, let's see. 3B. Okay.
If you sum up, it says, let's see if I can find my exact spot here.
So you're in the sum up?
Well, no, hold on. It could be in the one before the whole second. I got to find out where I got it from.
Yeah, I have my notes of where I found it at. But yeah, tell me where you're at, and then we'll go to where I was at and compare.
Okay. In so doing, they would bid up the value of the U.S. dollar in the foreign exchange market. This appreciation of the U.S.
Wait, where are you at?
I'm in the last paragraph before summing up.
Oh, before summing up. Okay.
Okay, so right in the middle of it, on the right-hand side, it starts with this appreciation of the U.S. dollar makes U.S. goods more expensive compared to foreign goods, which depresses net exports and shifts the aggregate demand curve to the left, which is almost verbatim the question we have.
Okay. Okay, so I see what you're saying, but that one is talking about exports, and this one is talking about incentives. Is that right?
Well,
We're on question 10.
Right, but the theory is, okay, so if, I'm just reading it out loud. If speculators lost confidence in foreign economies, and so
no, I understand.
Buy more U.S. bonds. By buying the U.S. bonds, the dollar would appreciate, which would cause the aggregate demand shift to the left. Right.
Okay, wait. Which one are you on? Oh, I'm on 9. I mean on 10. What one are you on? 9. You're on 9?
Yeah.
Okay. So that one I have net exports, second paragraph. I think right where you're at. Okay, I was reading the wrong question, so I apologize. Let me get back on page. Okay, so I was on the same paragraph, but that's why I felt I went with D. Okay, let me reread this. If they lost confidence in foreign economies and wanted to buy more U.S. bonds, the U.S. dollar would depreciate. We both agree on that. So you said C and I said D. Is that right?
No, I said B. See,
oh, you said B. Okay, let me just reread it again. Okay, so, okay. The question is, if we are buying more U.S. bonds, they lost confidence in foreign economies and want to move their, okay, in doing so, they bid up the value of the dollar in the foreign exchange market. This appreciation for dollar.
Let's stop right there for a second. If they're bidding up the value of the dollar, then by definition, the dollar is appreciating. Not depreciating, it's appreciating. The dollar is now in demand. It's appreciating in value.
Yep. I think, let me reread it one more time, but I think you're right. I think I jumped to the very last and didn't realize I was doing the conversely. Speculation causes depreciation, so let me just reread that, but I think that I see what you're saying here. Okay, so for instance, if you lose confidence in foreign economies, this is exactly the question. Okay, we've lost confidence, we want to U.S. bonds. In doing so, they bid up the value of the dollar in the foreign exchange. This appreciation, so you're right, so that's A or B. This appreciation makes U.S. goods more expensive compared to foreign goods, which depresses net exports.
Which shifts the demand curve to the left.
Okay, so that is B. Yes. Okay. Yep, I think I just went to that conversely and jumped ahead and was like, oh, okay, great. I see the answer. Yeah. So, great. I agree. Thank you.
I'm looking at your pictures on the wall while you're reading. So, out of total switching gears on you and asking a personal question, you said you have a child that's special needs. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is his, I don't know, need or condition?
Oh, so it's unusual. It's actually an anxiety disorder. So he was born 3 months early and has had a bunch of surgeries, and he is now physically healthy with the exception of he's got a lung issue, but he has sensory issues and also this anxiety disorder. So he's kind of afraid of everything. So noises, objects, clouds, trees, wind, laundry rooms, people. So if he's out of the house, he actually can't function. So people always confuse him with autism, but when he's at home and feels safe, he actually is high functioning and fine. So we're working on that.
So it's really about helping him become comfortable, and then once he's comfortable, he's okay.
Well, kind of. Yeah, I mean, that would be an easy way to say it, but there's not actually a way to teach it because it's, okay, so it's from the part of your brain that deals with like stress. When your body's under stress, we all react, you get like nervous or you sweat or you whatever. His actually paralyzes him because it's shaped slightly different. And so we're trying to teach him coping mechanisms. So he's only 4, and so it's just hard to teach him. I think as he gets older and understands,
right,
what it all means, I think it will be easier. I don't know. We're in a support group, and I get mixed feedback on that, but
I'm sure.
I don't know. I just see a lot of positive things for him. So, yeah.
I have a daughter-in-law who just graduated from BYU Idaho last semester, and she graduated in special needs education.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness for special needs teachers. My mom was a special needs teacher, and I have to say, so he's at a special needs school, and it's interesting because if I was to put him in, like even at his daycare when I have to go to work, because it's just him and I. And so when I have to go to work and leave him at daycare, he is just with regular kids, and they all just think like, oh, he must be shy because he just kind of sits in a corner. Or I get a lot of like, your kid must be autism, because everyone knows what autism is now or something. And so, but I'm lucky because at his school, his teacher is very aware of different special needs, and she's great because she knows that he's capable of doing certain things, so she'll send assignments home so that he can actually go through motions rather than just being like, well, I guess that's the way it is for him. So I feel like as long as I can keep people like that in his life, that
sure,
he'll be just fine eventually. So
right. And I know it's easy for me to say sitting from here, but it sounds like like you said, I think if I were you, I would probably hold out that desire and that hope for him, that as he gets older and you can communicate with him on a deeper level, that he'll start to understand things better, and then that might help him to, work through something he might have going on.
Yeah, it's kind of sweet because right now he's young enough that he doesn't really understand that he's different. You know, kids play with kids, and his cousins are great, and we have a lot of family out here. I live in Utah, and they're great. So he really doesn't get it yet, but I'll have my heart break a little bit when he starts being big enough that he realizes that, that's something that he will need to work on, but when he does realize that, he'll be big enough to get the concepts. We've done therapy, and it's been really hard because he doesn't get why he has to do it.
Well, I can understand that being a double-edged sword. It probably would be hard as a mom to see that he would be hard for him to understand that he has to work on that. But then at the same token, the fact that now he's old enough that he can work on that is also
Yeah, exactly. So some days are hard, but most days are really good. We've got a great system. So
great.
I've been super fortunate. So in fact, this schooling has been one of the big things, because I used to manage hair salons all over the U.S. for like 20 years. I've been in hair salons, but you work nights and weekends and holidays, and with it just being him and me when he was first born, his first year and a half, he had a lot of health issues too, and oxygen and feeding tubes and all these things. And anyways, I wasn't Mormon, and so then someone told me about like Pathway and being able to switch careers, and all of a sudden everything worked out. We moved to Utah, and I started the school and found a job that works with us, and it's been like, so like I get jazzed about like this schooling and like trying to do my best with the grades, because I feel like everything happens for a reason, and this is how we will get him to have like a really good opportunity. So
that's neat.
It's pretty
cool.
Really cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. But I didn't realize the pictures, but anyways, it's interesting how we've met every week, but we really don't know much about each other. Like I know that you work and you run a business, but I don't really know until you said something today. I was like, I assumed you were married, but don't really know anything about you.
Yeah, no, I'm married. In fact, my wife's about 20 feet from me. She's doing homework too. We've been married for 25 years, and we have 4 kids. Pretty much. And a grandbaby, that's true. Our granddaughter, in fact, they were just here for the holidays. They're back up at BYU, Idaho. We have 2 kids who currently go there. They're both married, both returned missionaries. Our oldest is a son, 24. He's got about a year and a half left, and lives there in Rexburg. And our daughter just got married a couple months ago before school started, and her husband are back up at school. He's got about a little less than a year left. Her husband has to finish. And then we have a son who went to BYU, Idaho before his mission, and he's now serving in Logan, Utah, and has about 6 months left. He'll be home in April.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And then our youngest son is a junior in high school. So we have 4 kids.
Oh, wow. And that's interesting because other than your youngest, all of you, including you guys, all do BYU, Idaho. Is your wife through BYU, Idaho also?
Well, yeah, we have technically 5 of us. One of them sort of inactive at the moment because he's on his mission. But yeah, we have 5 of us that attend BYU, Idaho.
That's awesome. That's crazy.
It's really.
Do you guys compete for who's going to graduate first?
Well, it won't be me because I only went to a semester of school before my mission. Then I went on my mission. I came back, and I had every intent of going back to school, but I got involved in a family business, and here I am you know,
Yeah.
30 years later, and we had a kid that we sort of, when I say adopted, we adopted him, but not officially adopted him. He was in high school and going through a bunch of struggles and played basketball with one of our sons. And he came and lived with us for about 16 or 17 months and had a bunch of issues. And he barely graduated high school. And so, and was kind of behind. And so when this Pathways thing came up, my wife and I went to the meeting for him. And we were sitting there in the meeting and realizing that Eddie was probably, between her and I, we were going to do half or more of the school with him just to help him get through it. And we looked at it and said, well, if we're going to do that, why don't you just go to this?
Why don't we all just do this?
Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And then unfortunately for Eddie and for us, Eddie continued to make life decisions that forced us to kind of ask him that he needs to move out and back in with his mom. So
yeah, that's a tough life lessons.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but
well,
yeah.
That's great though. But clearly, it impacted his life and also your guys's, because here you are back in school. Yep. I mean, that's crazy. Who would have thought?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too, because I honestly resent it and get very frustrated sometimes, because I have a job that's kind of demanding in the sense that it's very intense. So when I go to work, it's not like I mean, I get it's a paving concrete company, so we do a lot of work with home builders. We have about a little over 100 employees. We work 8 or 9 jobs in any given day, and I'm our vice president of operations. So when my phone rings, it's a problem. That's really what I deal with. And so there's times when my phone just nonstop. And so at the end of the day, you come home and you're like, you know, you're taking arrows from every direction all day, and then now I deal with 3 or 4 hours worth of homework. You know what I mean? So there's times you really resent. It's like, holy cow! Like, you know, at this point in my life, is this really what I want to, you know? But I really enjoy the learning aspect of it, but I don't enjoy the deadline aspect of it.
Yeah, I feel like at least the deadlines keep me on track. But yeah, I could really do without that stress of that sometimes. You know, because Thomas was still having some surgeries when I first started school. And so it was really difficult to like go to work and then feel like I wasn't getting enough time with him all day, and then trying to be with him in the evening and deal with the medical. But at the same time, then that also helped me like my drive, like, okay, I'm not going to take this semester off. We're just going to power through. So it's interesting. I think though, being older and going back to school makes a difference. Sometimes you can tell when the younger kids are in the class with us, and it's like, some of their comments, or I'm like, I think you just don't take this for granted. You don't know how like great it is to do it young. You know, like that's awesome. If I didn't have all the demands of like an adult, you know, like woulda, coulda, shoulda, you know, but.
Right. Well, no, I completely understand what you're saying on that too. I read some of the message board posts or some of the responses they give, and I think, wow, would you spend a whole 5 seconds on that? It's like.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I see you really thought about that.
Yeah.
Well, and then occasionally I get someone that I'm like, wow, your response really blows me away. Like there's someone that actually posted on our, on the one that we're doing for this week for the extra credit. And I feel like, wow, you really like spent some extra time researching for your post, as opposed to like I spent some time really thinking about what I thought about it and, you know, my own opinion. But I was like, wow, on top of all of our homework, you did extra research to like, so I always really appreciate it when people put in that extra effort.
Yeah, I'm more of a just get it done kind of a thing, because I feel like I just don't have that much time.
Yeah, exactly. So. Exactly. I'm like, I want to think about it. I want to do a good job, but I don't want to spend too much extra time. I'm like, time is precious for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, let's get back to it. So,
so
on 9, we agreed B as in boy.
Yep.
And so now we're on 10. I had B as in boy.
I had A.
Okay. So let's take a look at this.
And I remember reading that now. Hold on a second. Almost verbatim.
Yeah, so 23.
Because at first I couldn't find this, and then I went back and looked it up. Do you have a note on where you got yours?
Yeah, so I did it under 23A, under wealth and effect, and also the interest rate effect.
23. Which paragraph are you in?
So I actually am in 2 sections. So I did which of the following provides incentives for consumers to spend less when the price level rises? And so it's wanting you to note, okay, we're looking at either the wealth effect and the interest rate effect, and we're wanting to know if both of those are taken into effect, are consumers going to spend less? And so on the wealth effect, I have in the italics, I have that a decrease in price level raises the value of money, makes consumers wealthier, and has them spend more. So an increase in spending means larger quantity of goods demanded. Conversely, an increase in price level reduces the value of money and reduces consumer spending. So the question is, if incentives for consumers makes them spend less when price levels rise, that has to do with the wealth effect, right? Because if the price level, maybe I'm thinking it backwards. Am I thinking it backwards? Okay, an increase in the price level reduces the value and makes them poorer, which reduces their spending. So that's the wealth effect.
Correct.
So that is the wealth effect for sure, which means that it's A or B. But then I went to the interest rate effect, and in their italics it says a lower price reduces interest rate and encourages greater spending or investment.
So when
conversely, a higher price level discourages, and also decreases. So it is both of them, right? So yes. It's A because it's the wealth effect and the interest rate.
Right.
Okay. Conversely, a higher price level raises the interest rate and discourages decreasing. Well, okay, so this is where I was on that, because it doesn't actually talk about spending, it talks about the quantity, right? Oh no, it discourages investment spending. That's where I was. I read that last line and was like, well, it's talking about the quantity of goods, not actual spending. But right before that, it does talk about spending. Okay, so I would agree. So that's
the other thing about this is too, and I know this gets onto shaky ground somewhat, but I always have to let this pass my common sense test. If you are just your average consumer and interest rates today, let's say, are 4%, and tomorrow they're 8%, are you going to spend less or spend more?
Right. Yeah, of course. Cash. You're going to spend less.
Yeah, you're going to work
up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I totally agree. So A. Yeah. For some reason, I get hung up on parts of sentences. I'm like, no, it's talking about quantities, not spending. But no, you're right. Okay. So 11, I had B.
I had C.
Oh, come on. Sometimes we're so on point together. Yep. Okay, so let's see.
The last three we've been off. Okay. So since World War II, the U.S. has almost always had rising prices and an upward trend in real GDP. To explain this, you had which one again? I'm sorry.
I have B, and you had C.
Only necessary for the aggregate demand to shift or shifts right over time. Well, that's true. I believe that the aggregate does shift right over time, but I also believe that supply must be shifting with the aggregate at the same time in order for you to have growth. You can't have one without the other over the long run. In order for you to have a real trend in rising GDP.
That's not true, because over time you're talking about the long run, and the supply curve is vertical because it doesn't shift. Right?
Has almost always had a rising GDP and trend. Explain this. Aggregate demand, the long run supply must be shifting right.
And I only have this section. I don't have where in this I found it. So let me see if I can find what I was looking at.
Well, okay.
I found something about war, but then it didn't feel like it applied to this, so I skipped it.
Okay. First off, I had a really hard time with this one too, and I did some searching outside the book to get an answer that I wanted to. Because first off, in order for a GDP to grow, we'll go back to my common sense thing for a second, because I know you can find this in the book too. In order for the GDP to grow, the demand has to stay constant. If there's no demand, there's going to be zero growth. So to me, that part of it was easy. there's going to be a shift in the demand curve to the right over time, or you're never going to get a rise in GDP. Now, the question is, does the supply have to shift along with it over time? And according to this, see, now this gets back to how you read things again. It doesn't say in here that the supply curve had to shift, that it's not still vertical. It's saying that it had to be shifting right, which is true. It can still end up being vertical and shifting right, but that the aggregate demand is shifting further. In other words, the aggregate demand for your demand always has to stay slightly ahead of the supply curve, and that's what continues to drive your GDP. Once your demand falls below your supply, your GDP is going to be, and that's that stagflation that we read about, right? That's demand is what drives the market. So it stands to reason that if your demand is always shifting, then the supply has to catch up with it, or you don't get growth. So you think it's B?
Yeah.
Let's put a pin in that one. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, I agree. Let's come back to it, because I like what you're saying to me, but again, I don't know where to find that in the book. So okay, let's move on and we'll come back.
This is one of the ones I never could find an answer for that I felt comfortable with.
Okay.
Do you have a
12? I have a reference. For wages tend to be sticky. Is that the one?
Yep.
Okay, so 4D in the second paragraph.
Of 4D?
Uh-huh. Let's see if I can find it. Okay,
well,
4D.
See, back to my business life, they tend to be sticky, I can guarantee, because of contracts.
Right.
That I know for sure. So it's going to have to be A or B. But the other two, I'm not 100% sure on.
Well, I want to say that I actually found this. Okay, so wages tend to be sticky. Okay. So in the second paragraph under the sticky wage theory,
4D
it says, yep, it says according to this theory. So this is where my notes are, and I don't know what I was reading here. So let me just read it out loud and we'll just see.
Sure.
Okay, according to this theory, the short-run aggregate supply curve supplies upward because nominal wages are slow to adjust to changing economic conditions. In other words, wages are sticky in the short run. To some extent, the slow adjustment of nominal wages is attributable to long-term contracts between workers and firms that fix nominal wages, sometimes for as long as 3 years. In addition, this prolonged adjustment may be attributable to slowly changing social norms and notions of fairness that influence wage setting.
Okay, so then I was right on the contract, so then it has to be A, because it hits all three.
Yeah. Yep, and that's what I've got, A, because it hit all three.
So I knew it was A or B, because like I said, I know contracts is what definitely stagnates wage, or can make some sticky, if you want to call it that. So the question is, but that nails A perfectly. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So 13, I had B as in boy.
I had D.
You're just opposite on all of them, but you know what? That's good, because then it helps us talk about it and explain it. Because sometimes I found the reference, and other times you understand the common sense behind it. So let's try this. Okay. So which of the following shifts short run, but not long run, aggregate supply right? I have my reference as 24E in the first paragraph.
All right,
let's see what that is. 4E.
I think 4E, you said?
Yeah. That's what I've got here. 24E. Okay. Okay, which of the following shifts short run but not long run? So it's saying all of these things will affect short run. So we talk about sticky wages, sticky prices, misinterpretations, and then it says in the middle, it says, thus, when thinking about what shifts the short run aggregate supply curve, we have to consider all of those variables that shift the long run, But in addition, we have to consider a new variable, the expected price level.
Right.
So that's the only answer that talks about the expected price level. So right? Or am I thinking it wrong?
No, it talks about an expected price level. I agree with you.
Oh, except that, oh yeah, and then we have to consider all those variables.
But it says, in the very last sentence says, and the perception about relative prices may be flawed.
Okay, but now I think I'm reading this backwards. I think I was thinking, okay, so the question is saying, which is long run, but also in the short run, right? But I think where I read is short run and also long run. Like, I think I read it backwards.
Read down in the second paragraph about 3 or 4 lines down where it says, for example.
Okay, for example, when an increase in the economy's stock productivity, the economy is able to produce more output, so that both the long run and short run aggregate supply shift to the right. Okay, so that is economy's capital stock. Okay.
So the trick answer they're trying to give you would be C, because that's a decrease in capital stock. That wouldn't shift it, but an increase would. Right?
No, I think that either would, but I think the trick is that we're looking for one that applies in long run, but not in short runs. And so far, any of these, the capital would apply in a long run also, wouldn't it? Is that what it's saying?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, go back to the common sense thing here. If you flood the market with additional cash, what happens in the short run to that supply curve? We know from previous readings that when you dump money into the economy, what happens in the short run? It grows. Boom.
Right.
So automatically, when you dump money into something and the economy grows, what happens to the supply curve? It's going to the right. In the short run.
Yeah.
In the long run, everything goes up. But in the short run, you get growth. That's why the government tries to stimulate the economy sometimes by dumping cash into it.
Right.
So let's go back to your B, though, for a second.
Okay, hang on one second. I'm just reading one other thing really quick.
Sure.
Okay. General estimates the increase in expected price level reduces the quantity of goods. Shifts to short run. Okay. Well, okay. Where are you at?
I don't know. After we've read everything we've read, what do you feel on that answer?
Well, I felt pretty good about my answer initially. What do you have for it?
I have D.
You have D. Okay, where are you finding something about the actual money supply?
I don't have my note on that. Hold on, let me go back.
That's one I'm not actually seeing in here. So I am not feeling as confident as I was originally, but I'm not feeling, I don't know where money supply would play. I see a lot of actual price change, expected price change, and capital, but I don't see anything about money supply.
Okay, let's shift to 5A.
Okay. 5A. Okay.
Although that's aggregate demand, not supply, correct?
Yeah, this one is demand. We need to go back to supply.
Sorry.
Nope, you're just fine.
I'm gonna search.
I feel like 4E is the correct section just because it's saying which following shifts short run. And that's exactly what the label of this section is. It says why the short run supply would shift.
Okay.
So I feel like we're in the right spot. I think that maybe we're just not, feeling like we found the actual answer.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're looking for something that affects the short run,
but not
the yeah. Which one is going to shift the short one right, but not the long run? Okay.
Remember that in supply, the long run's vertical anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But that sometimes will shift.
Right. True.
Okay, so let's start with what we know. It's discussed earlier. These are the factors. The economy is able to produce more output. So both the long and the short run. So, right. Okay, so you already said this, but just to reiterate, we know it's not capital because it says capital can affect both long and short run to group to the right.
Right.
So we know it's not that.
Well, but hold on. But once again, they try to trick you because that says an increase in capital. This C says a decrease, so it can't be that anyway. It's like a play on the thing there.
Oh, okay, right.
So to me, it can't be a decrease in the actual price. Well, I don't know. Go ahead, keep reading. Sorry.
Well, okay. So we've crossed off capital. So then the new variable affects is the price level. As we've discussed, the quantity of goods has short run and sticky wages, blah, blah, blah. Perceptions are based on the expected price level. When people expect the price level, the short run will shift. To make the idea more concrete, let's consider a specific aggregate supply to sticky wage theory. Okay, so this is talking about expected prices. So according to the theory, when workers and firms expect the price level to be high, they're likely to bargain for a higher level of nominal wages. Higher wages, firms' costs, actual price level, higher costs reduce the quantity of goods supplies. Thus, when expected price level rises, wages are higher, costs increase. Thus, the short-run aggregate supply curve shifts to the left. Conversely, when the expected price level falls, wages are lower, costs decline, and the short-run aggregate supply shifts to the right.
So but
in the long run, it will even out because they've negotiated for it. But in the short run, it shifts to the right.
You know what? The more we read here, the more I'm second guessing my own answer because I think this is a little bit of a trick question, and that's why you have C in there. And I think if this was which of these shifts the demand curve right, then D would absolutely be the correct answer. But I think that maybe that's where I got mixed up because when you read on the supply, I think B is the correct answer for supply.
Yeah. I would agree with you when you're saying about.
Maybe I just assumed that we've been talking about demand for so much that when I looked at this, I think that's probably what I was thinking.
Well, and I think that's where most of these questions are, is because we know the answers to all of these when we're talking about our normal supply and demand.
Right.
All of a sudden, everything is a trick question because you have to really think about every.
What they're asking.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so yeah, I think you were correct. I think 13 is B.
Okay, yeah, and I still feel pretty good about that too. Now that I've read it more, I feel more concrete about it.
Okay, and like I said, the other reason I think that it's B also, I mean, I think that what you read is also spot on, but I also think as I read this through further and I think about it, that it's the demand curve that would shift right on the increase of money, which makes me believe that's not the correct answer for this one. And we know it's not C. So I think what you just read is almost as close as we found in the book. So I really do think it's B.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna stick with B. Okay. 14. Do we think we got one where we both agree?
I don't know. Drum roll.
I have got E as in dog.
Hey, so do I.
A miracle just happened.
I was just rereading. Okay. Did we misread this one too?
Right, yeah, exactly. No, I feel like this one actually was like word for word.
Okay. Yeah, I found that one too, and I was pretty comfortable with that. Like I said, on mine, I have a little system. If I circle it, I'm pretty confident in it. If I put a line next to it, it's like I think
that's right.
So this one was circled, so I know. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Pretty good about it. Okay, so now we are getting into more of the ones where I started to have question marks next to some of mine.
Me too.
Okay. So for 15, I had C.
And I never felt comfortable with any of these. So I have a couple of notes, but I don't have anything specifically. Where do you have your note for reading?
So I had 3B. Let's go find it.
Refer to the stock market boom of 2015. What happens to the expected price level? What impact does this have?
Oh, and I think that actually this particular one, I didn't feel comfortable with my answer, and then all of a sudden I found it. So let me see if I can.
Well, let me just say that I have to go along with this part for what it's worth. If I just forget what the book says, and I just think of common sense in my business experience, C does make sense. There's no question about that. Because when the stock market booms, price levels are going to rise. There's no question about that. Expected price levels go up. And if price levels rise, by definition, I get it every single day. It's a steady stream of people coming into my office looking for a price increase, looking for wages.
Right.
So just my own business experience tells me that when prices rise, right behind that are employees knocking on my door looking for a raise.
Yeah, exactly.
I just know it. So, like I said, without even having to read in the book, C to me makes sense right out of the gate. But let's go look at 3B just to see what the book says.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I felt really comfortable with my answer because I feel like I found it. But now I'm not sure where in here I found this. I almost want to say I found it off one of the slides. But I would note that if I did.
Well, it's going to have to be fairly deep in at this point. But let's flip. Here's the sticky wage theory, so it's going to be further than that. Long run equilibrium, short run effects, World War II, case study. There's the recession. It's got to be after that.
I feel like also these PowerPoints are starting to get ridiculously long.
They do. They really do get long.
I almost don't even want to look at them.
60 slides. I'm like, holy crud, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the slides specifically about the stock market.
Okay, yeah, I would have noted it, I would think, if I did, but I was just thinking that for some reason, but okay. So let's see. Okay, so shifts arising from changes in consumption.
Well, let me just say this. We're going to go back to, I'm just going to go back to my common sense theory again. If the stock market booms, expected prices will absolutely rise. There's no question in my mind about that. Who's going to come in and try to strike a level for lower wages when prices are rising? That would be nobody.
Right, exactly.
Even as an employer, I don't have an expectation that as prices rise that I get to pay lower wages. In fact, I know the opposite is going to happen. I know I'm going to have to pay more.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I think I found it though in here because it talks specifically about a stock market boom makes people wealthier and less concerned about saving. The resulting increase in consumer spending means a greater quantity of goods, so the demand shifts from to the right. Thus, at any given changes, much people want to consume at any given level.
You're on 3.
Demand curves.
This isn't 3B?
Well, yeah, so this is in 3B, but then it doesn't actually answer anything about wage bargaining. I'm like, it's talking about that stock boom.
Well, let's look at the other options that we have available to us. It's got to be C. I really do think it is C.
Right.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, no, I was going to say down in the summary at the bottom, it also talks about a tax cut, a stock boom, shifts the demand curve to the right. But again, it doesn't talk about
wages.
But we know, we do know though, that if things are more expensive, they're going to want higher wages. And that goes into, we agree on that one. Okay.
So on to 16, it's either A or C.
Okay. I circled A. I also had B, which is erased, and a question mark. So I was not sure on this one at all.
Okay. Well, it says policymakers who want to control fiscal policy and want to offset the effects on output, offset the effects on output for an economic contraction.
Okay, so we know that it's supply.
Right, but let's talk about this for a second. So if the economy is contracting, that means it's slowing down, it's not doing super well. So what do they want to do? They want to shift it to the right and crank it back up.
Right.
So it has to shift to the right. That's why I said it has to be A or it has to be C, because they want to undo the contraction.
Right, but then I think that because they're talking about they're offsetting the effects on output, that's the supply, not the demand.
Right. That's true.
So that's why I went with A, but I again couldn't find it in the book and wasn't sure.
But then it also says here, it says, but if a contraction caused by a shift in aggregate supply could use policy to shift my gut wants to say that it's C, which is what I think.
Okay. I see where you're going with that. Let's revisit that one for just a second. Okay. So I feel like we should be able to just find this in here, and I never did.
I never did either. And I looked around for it. Maybe it's on the slides. I honestly just kind of combed through those, you know.
Yeah, there were so many. I feel like I'm having an easier time finding your references in the book than on the slides anymore because they're so long that I'm not using them. Okay. Any change in the economy that alters the natural level of output shifts the long-run aggregate supply curve. Because output in the classical model,
Well, here's an interesting one I just found on slide 57.
Okay.
It says, the general theory of employment, interest, and money argued recessions and depressions can result from inadequate demand. Policymakers should shift aggregate demand. Classical theory is in the long run is misleading guide to current affairs. In the long run, we are all dead. Economists set themselves too easy, too useless task. Anyway, the only reason I bring that up
looks like it's right on par with that.
Right. What I'm saying is they're saying that we have this contraction of the market, which is like the beginning of a recession. So once again, we know things have to shift to the right to fix the problem. So like I said, it has to be A, it has to be C.
Right.
The question is it in supply or is it in demand? Well, they've already told us that supply is no good. Well, how do I increase supply? I increase the demand and supply follows. The demand doesn't come because supply is high, right? We've already learned that. Supply is or demand is what drives supply.
Yeah, I like what you're saying.
I know, but I'd like to find it in writing too. But I really do think the further we talk about this, it's C.
And I clearly was not confident on that. And what you're saying sounds, I mean, it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, but we've talked ourselves into plenty of wrong answers before.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm back to 24E because it's talking about why the short run supply curve might shift. But we're not necessarily saying that it would shift. We're talking about like intervention.
Right. We're saying,
and so we could other one shift.
If they could shift it, what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to increase demand. They're going to try to increase supply. Which are they going to try to do? The government has a hard time influencing supply. But it can influence
I wonder about where it talks about two causes of economic fluctuations. Because then it makes me wonder if that's where it's going to start talking about how they go with each other.
Right.
Okay, so we've got shift on the demand.
Okay, here's an interesting one. This is the kind of thing that just, now I realize I'm looking for the answer to back up what I think, but I found another comment. It says, this is on a different I just did a Google search, and it said the aggregate demand always shifts to the left when the government cuts military spending. So if the government wanted to increase the demand to the right, all it has to do is spend more money. And that's how it affects the economy. So it's just further backing up C.
Well, I'll tell you, I would go with it because you're making a great case. I just really wish that we could find it specifically in our reading material. Because I don't have a different case to make. And what you're saying makes sense to me. You know, it's just the only thing is that I'm just like, man, I wish that we could just find this. Okay. Okay, so let's see. In the short run, the economy moves along the aggregate supply curve, going from A to B. Output falls, the price levels fall. Falling indicates the economy is in a recession. So this looks like it's talking about what we're talking about. The firms respond to lower sales and productions by reducing employment. Thus, pessimism that caused the shift in aggregate demand is, to some extent, self-fulfilling. So this is also saying that if it looks like you're, well,
you know, the further I think about this, and the further I go, I really believe it's C. But tell you what, put a pin in that one, okay, and I'll turn mine in first.
Let's go with,
yeah, we do.
Okay. We'll go with C. I'm going to keep my question mark because I really just wish we could find like the specific reference. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes sense. So I think that this whole page where I'm at right now, I'm looking at 5A, and this whole page overwhelmed me. I get overwhelmed by graphs, and it's too much reading about the graphs. I'm very visual, and so I really like the videos for this. But I have a feeling that this is the page that's telling us what's happening.
Okay. So let's move on to 17.
We'll come back to it. Okay, 17, I have B.
Hey, I have B also.
All right. Okay, 18, I have D as in dog.
This is what I had a question mark on.
Yeah, so this one, I have each of them circled, and I have 24A is where I started to find it, and then I started finding all of them.
Well, you know, you say that, and the more you say that, the more I think D is the correct answer, because I have a line next to a couple of them, which then leads me to believe, like, we're back to that thing again, where I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a couple of them that are correct, and if there's more than one that's correct, then it has to be D. So
yeah,
all I have to do is find two that are correct, and D is correct. So
yeah, exactly.
So I'm comfortable going with D.
Okay. Okay.
So then we move on to 19, which I don't have a specific.
I don't have an answer.
But here's what I did make a note on. It says stagflation is when prices rise and unemployment rises also.
Oh, okay. So this is a mistake question. And I think that it's because of, I mean, if you notice, A and B are the exact same, and C and D are the exact same.
So I think that when we open up the quiz, there's going to be one that says, it's going to say that the prices rise and unemployment rise. There's going to be a way to be able to do both.
Right. And so what I did for this is I just put what I found on the flashcard, which is prices increase, output decreases. So
okay.
Yeah, so we're just gonna have to get in there and see what the question is. But
okay, so let's look at that when we do it. And then for 20, I had C.
Okay, I also had C.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna open up my quiz and start.
Well, we had one that we were gonna come back to really quick. We never went over. Is it 11?
Yeah, 11 is the one we dropped the pin in.
No, 16 is. We did it with 11 and 16, but I thought we were going to go back and revisit 11.
Yeah, 11 we were going to go back and visit, and then what was 16? Sorry, hold on, let me flip back to that.
16 is the aggregate demand to the right, or the aggregate supply to the right.
Okay. All right. That one I'm feeling about 95% on 16, so I'm
okay.
Not as concerned. But 11 is the one that we're still maybe.
Yeah.
And once again, I have C, and you thought it was B. So let me go back here to my test, my quiz. I'm pretty confident in both those. So
okay.
I don't have a problem filling it out and turning it in and seeing if we get 100 or if we miss
Great.
two.
Yeah, if you're on board with that, I'm on board with that. Sounds great.
Okay. All right, hold on a second. Now. Oh my.
But remember, when we get to 19, we're looking for what the questions are.
When we get to the opening my quizzes, that's another thing that happened. I went to open my quiz and I had the same problem, and it was a nightmare. This week has been a nightmare with quizzes. So I'm a little concerned about opening this here because it may not work for me.
You know what I did last week? So like I said, I had that exact same problem you had, and I was like, I've actually felt really bad because I hadn't seen it before. And I thought when you were describing it to me, I've had a different issue that has regularly occurred with some of my quizzes this semester. And I'm sure it's from their update. So I was like giving you advice, but I guess I wasn't really understanding what was going on. And so I was like, oh, it's not letting me. And I literally just closed out of the whole thing and re-logged in, and it worked.
Yeah,
it just said,
I'll try that because I just got nailed again.
Did you?
Yep, and it does this on my home computer, and it doesn't do this on my work computer. So maybe there's an issue with something.
I don't know. I don't know, because I never have an issue with it on my computer ever, except then I did on that last quiz. So, and I use the same computer each time. I just have the one.
I tell you, it's beyond frustrating.
Yeah.
It challenges my Tourette's.
Yeah, so mine pulled up just fine.
Yeah, that's not going to work for me here. I've done this before to know that if I go through and fill it out, I'm just wasting my time. When I get to
the because it won't save it. You can't submit it. You can't do anything.
I'm gonna have to go.
I'll go ahead and submit it. I'm putting it in anyways, and I don't have a better answer. I think for 11 though, I had a different answer than you, and that's where I'm nervous because 16, I don't have a different answer. I just didn't know the answer. I was like, it doesn't really make sense to me, and I don't have a reference. But 11, I did have an answer.
So on 11, you want to go with B, and on 16, you're going to go with which one? C?
16, I'm going to go with C.
Okay, and on 11, you're going to go with B. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's see how you do.
Okay.
Because the only one that we are even at odds on, and then it all is 11.
Right, is 11.
So when you get a 17, we won't have any idea what to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, curses.
Yeah. For whatever reason, it just won't let me. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
That is when it would be nice if the rest of the group would come in so they could just fill it out for us.
Yeah, no, it'd be really nice to have more than just two because maybe somebody has.
Well, yeah, exactly. Give a different insight, or maybe they found the reference. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I've gone all the way in and out 3 times now, and it's just not open.
I'm so sorry. That type of thing would be like what would tip me over.
Yeah,
like,
I did on Saturday, because on Saturday I had to come up the same problem here, and I went through and took my quiz where I spent all the time, turned in all the questions, and then couldn't submit it. And then I went, so I was okay, fine.
And then it's the due date. I mean, what do you do?
So I had to go over to my office, and I did it on that computer in my office, but then the questions aren't always exactly the same. So I basically had to retake the freaking quiz, which I was very excited about. Spent another hour and a half taking the quiz.
And that takes all the time and effort, plus like the time of having to go. I mean, it feels redundant anyways to have to redo it.
Right. And then I ended up missing 3. So I got a B on the quiz. I was pretty irritated because I really felt like last week I was going to get 100. I really felt like I knew everything. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, okay, we nailed it down. We got this.
But between my frustration and my bad attitude, I probably lost 1 or 2 just for that. our granddaughter here, and I'm over taking a test for the second time on the same
Right.
day.
Well, and that's when it's hard too. It's like, I mean, I understand we're international and it's great, and I'm happy to do homework, but sometimes, like, I had one class, it wasn't even an option to try to go ahead. Something didn't open up until Thanksgiving Day. I was like, come on, open it up early or extend the date. Like, nobody is doing this on Thanksgiving.
Right.
I mean, I did at night, but still, it's like, oh, come on.
And then I have a science class I'm taking, and in my science class, not only did they have all the regular work, but there was a 4-unit test that was due last week as well in that science class. And the previous week, we turned in a major group assignment, and I noticed that on last week, my teacher didn't grade one paper from the week. So he took the week off, but
right, he took the week off.
4-unit test on top of that for our week.
Well, and that's like my science class. I'm really enjoying it. We've kind of talked about how you're doing the natural disasters. I'm doing the stewardship this semester, but that was it. Last week, I had more of a workload in science than I had in the whole semester or in any of my other classes. And this week, there's like 3 things for us to do. I was like, what?
No, exactly. You couldn't have adjusted.
Like, that's poor planning. That's okay, but it's poor planning.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. I thought that my son, who's up there now, he's still got to take a couple of his GE things. I asked him, hey, which science class do I want to take? And he said, take natural disasters. And I said, okay. So I took it. And then I come to find out later, he goes, hey, I took natural disasters too. And I'm like, I thought you said you already took it. And he goes, no, that's just what I've heard. I'm like, well, dude, you could have told me that. So here's the ironic part. Totally unbeknownst, because I just signed up and just took the next available, and he did the same thing. We ended up in the exact same. So we're in the same natural disasters class this semester.
No.
We have the same teacher.
That's crazy.
He's never put us in the same group, but I don't know if he realizes we're father and son or if we just happen to have the same name.
Right, but that's crazy.
Yeah, same last name.
I mean, it's not a super crazy last name, but it's also not really common. I mean, I wonder if he put that together.
I don't know. If he looked up like our bios, he could probably figure it out, because I have a family picture. No, I know. I probably do. I don't know. I maybe described my family enough. If he did some research, he could probably figure it out.
Right. Okay, so number 19.
Yep.
Okay. It is different.
Yeah, I figured it had to be.
Okay, so we are saying that it is prices increase and unemployment
rises.
So they both rise.
Yes, that's what I think, yes. And I found that straight out of the book.
That is C. So stagflation exists when prices rise and unemployment rises.
Yeah, and that's straight off of the flashcard.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, and then 20 we have. Okay, go to submit.
Bombs away.
Yes, submit. Yes, submit. 18.
Wow.
So.
And you used.
And so the one that we disagreed on was 11. So I would probably use your answer.
Then, but even if that is correct, we still missed one.
Yeah, so there's still one that we aren't sure.
You know, and I have no doubt in my mind that when we got into all those ones where you and I disagreed, and there was probably like 5 in a row, and we're talking about, okay, does this shift the supply curve to the right or the demand curve to the right? Does it do this, the demand curve to, you know what I'm saying? There's no doubt in my mind that there's probably one of those.
It's got to be one of those.
Yeah, where we're just reading the question just slightly wrong, and if we thought about it, we could figure it out. But I'm probably not gonna mess around with it. The only thing I'm gonna do differently is turn in 11 with C, and I will remember to email you today myself, and I will tell you whether I got 17 or a 19.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I hope that you get a 19. That would be great, because I feel like it just validates where our thoughts are at, you know.
Right. Well, either way,
get a 17, I'll feel even more lost.
Yeah, there you go. Either way, I will email you today to tell you for sure what I get on it.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate it. And then, yeah, just don't forget to go and finish replying to the board, so you get the extra.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Anyways,
I will do that.
So, yeah, I'm like, that's such a quick, easy thing to do. So,
Right.
Gosh, I'm so sorry that you're having to like find different computers to take this test on.
Yeah.
What computer is your wife using? Use hers.
Yes, she's got our Surface laptop that she's using, but we I don't know why it wasn't like this all semester because I've been doing it here for the most part, and haven't had a problem. And then the last 2 weeks ago it started, and for whatever reason, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so weird. Wow. Anyways.
All right.
Okay, well, I feel pretty good about it. I really wish that I'd gotten a 19 or 20, but I also feel like at least 18 is like a good score. It's in my A range. I'm doing the extra credit, so I feel okay about it. I'd like to do better, but I feel happy that we aren't like way off base and getting a low score. So
if you had gotten a 19, I would have felt really good about it because then I would think that.
Right. Oh, great. You just put that wrong one in, Steph. Yeah, exactly. All right. Hey, well, there we go. We've got our answers down. So I think that we're good. Double check on 19 because so far mine are always in the same order.
Okay, I'll double check.
Some people like they're not, but I only find that really in the homework. So, but double check. I don't want to say, oh, put C in and have it be in the wrong order. But the wording that we agreed on was there.
Yeah, I wrote down the correct answer verbiage on that, so I'll just double check to find the right verbiage.
Literally, that's what I did here too.
Yeah,
I have it written right there.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
So, yep, exactly. Flashcards. This is the answer. So, okay, awesome. Well, it was great to chat with you again, and great to learn a little bit about you. And I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Okay, thanks a lot. You too.
Right,
bye.
bye-bye.